is the Purple People podcast. This episode is a look into documentation and outreach on Team Tardis. I will be interviewing a senior and a freshman to give you guys two different perspectives. In First Tech Challenge, our robotics level, there isn't just building and programming. There's also documentation and outreach, which is very important. To give you some information, I decided to talk to two documentarians on the team. We will cover what outreach is, what they document, and more. It's time to bring our guests in, who will give you more insight on this part of robotics. Hello, how are you guys?
We're good.
Please introduce yourselves for the listeners.
Yeah, so I'm Nicole Miller. I'm a senior at Corning Painted Post High School. I've been on Team Tardis for 4 years now, and I am the lead documentarian and outreach coordinator.
Hi everyone, I'm Mira Simmons. I'm a freshman at CBPHS. It's my first year on the team, and my couple main roles on the team are outreach, documentation, and I'm also the unified robotics lead.
Okay, so how would you describe you guys' roles to anyone who doesn't know what you do?
Sure. So our two main roles for both of us are outreach and documentation. So documentation is basically like robot yearbook, if you will. We create each season, there's a different game. So each season we create a 15-page document that encompasses the entire season. And that's everything from our team culture, our team goals, our robot, the processes that led us to our robot, our programming for the year, but also our outreach, because First Robotics isn't just about the robot, it's more about outreach. Well, it's also about outreach. Mira, do you want to talk about our outreach roles?
Yeah, so outreach for us is basically, we have three main kinds of outreach. We have STEM outreach, where we'll go to STEM professionals' place of work, and they'll give us a tour, show us a little bit about what they do, and then we'll bring one of our robots along and kind of show them what we do. And then community outreach, that's basically just going out to the community, doing good things. A couple weeks ago, we went to the food pantry and we packed over 100 bags of food for people for Christmas. And then our third type of outreach, which is probably our most prominent one, is our youth outreach. So actually next week, we're going to 5 of the 6 Corning Painted Post elementary schools to show them a bit about what STEM is and what they can do and how they can become basically one of us and do robotics when they get older.
Yeah, and our role with that is setting all of it up. So, making the connections with the different people, sending the emails, setting everything up for the team, then, sometimes teaching the team this is how we want you to interact with the little kids for this specific program and things like that.
Okay, so you mentioned an engineering notebook, and it has a lot of information. Do you find it difficult to get that information?
Yeah, so for our team, it's not typically too difficult to get the information, especially the people who make the portfolio also do the outreach, so that's already half of our portfolio. That's just our own knowledge. But the other half, we will usually, hunt people down in the robot room and try to interview them. But sometimes it's hard because everybody's so busy when we're in our robot room, we're trying to work on the robot, because we try to maintain a good, robotics and life balance. So we try not to bring the robot out of the room too much. So sometimes a lot of our communication is, after a robotics meeting or during school, hey, can you tell me about how the intake works? How do we pick up the balls, and what were the processes that got us there?
Okay, so how do you make sure everything is organized?
Yeah, so our mentor for the engineering portfolio He teaches graphic design here at the high school, so he's really good to teach us about like packaging and wording and stuff like that, because the judges only have a couple minutes to actually look at your portfolio, because you want to make it as concise as possible and make it really easy for them to read. So it's really helpful that we have that mentor to like teach us packaging and wording and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I would also say that like a lot of our structure carries from year to year. So, once we figured out our flow, every single year, first page is team cultures. The next 2 pages are like meeting the team and some other requirements like our CAD journey, our 3D printing journey. And then page 4 is right into the robot, and that's usually through page 7 and 8 with robot and programming, sometimes to page 9, and then the last couple of pages is always outreach. And we just kind of identified that as our structure. That's what works for us, and that's what we follow every year.
Yeah.
Okay, so one last notebook question. Why do you think a well-maintained notebook is so important for like both the judges and for the team?
Well, first of all, between competitions, a lot of stuff can change on not only the robot, but also like testing and stuff and programming and stuff like that. So we always have to make sure that we update the portfolio between competitions, and we always like double check to make sure that everything is right how it's supposed to be. There's nothing that's like incorrect or misleading for the judges and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say it's valuable to have it so up to date, because then if we ever want to, go back and see, okay, what worked, what didn't, we have a written record of it. It's not just based off of memory.
Yeah.
And that's basically it.
Okay, so you were talking about outreach. So, like, how far in advance do you usually begin planning an outreach event, and what are the first steps you usually take?
Yeah, so usually we'll start planning an outreach event anywhere between a month to 3 months in advance. And I say such a large time range because right now we're actually working on setting up a robotics weekend, the first ever Finger Lakes Robotics Expo, which is nicknamed as Flex Rex, at the Corning Museum of Glass. And because it's such an elaborate event, we need to start planning so early. We're planning to host it at the end of March, and we started planning for it in like November. But that was like brainstorming. Now that it's January, we're actually starting to do the planning. And so I would say for much more elaborate events, it'll be many, many months in advance. But like for, a elementary, like one night demo, that'll be maybe 2 weeks in advance, just making sure our demo bots work. So it really varies from what type of outreach we're doing.
How do you train or encourage newer team members to participate like confidently in outreach?
Yeah, so the expectation on the team is that if you can be there, you're there. Because as Nicole said earlier, it's not just about the robot. Our outreach is a very important part of our program and who we are as a team. So like if you have something to do, like you have sports or something else, you can go to that. But we also need you to, say you were a teammate, we also need you to communicate and, like tell us what's going on. And then beforehand, as I think Nicole also said earlier, we'll have a bit of a training session, if you will, for not only the more junior members, but also some of our more veteran members, because it might be a new program that we're doing for outreach and stuff like that. And one of our biggest forms of outreach, as I said earlier, is youth outreach. And the majority of the time, if not all the time, we'll take our demo bots that are like super simple and the kids can actually drive them, and we'll actually have our more freshman programmers and builders working on them to make sure they're ready, and they're ready to go for about 100 kids to use.
Yeah, I would say on a broader scale, to train new members, usually when we first onboard them, we'll have them kind of experiment like with what they want to do. For me, for example, I started as a builder. Now I don't touch the robot because I went through each of the different things. I was a builder for maybe the first 6 months on the team. Then I was a programmer for the next 2 years while doing outreach on the side before I fully immersed myself in documentation and outreach. And when we're trying to train new members, we'll always pair them with more senior members. So Mira is actually my I don't know what the word is, like mentee.
Sure.
My little one. And so a lot of what I try to do is, teaching her how to, write a formal email and how to plan different things, like the different steps that's required for all of the different things that we do, because there's a lot. So, yeah.
Okay, so shifting a bit towards like competition day.
Mm-hmm.
During competition, do you like need to collect any data? And if so, like what and like how do you do that?
Yeah, so most of the time, the way that we do what we call scouting, so we'll have, normally it's about a sheet paper, and we'll have people that aren't on the drive team or pretty much aren't doing anything at that time. We'll have them take a sheet of paper, and they'll go to each match, and they'll write down stats from one bot from that match. And then we'll put that into a spreadsheet, and it's just a lot of like comparing between the different teams to figure out who we want to pick as our alliance partner later in the day after our qualification matches.
Okay, so how do you coordinate like communication between the scouting team and then also like the driving team so they get that information?
Yeah, so a lot of the time it'll run through me and whoever's like inputting the data into our Google Sheet, because the drive team's so busy during the day, and the extent usually of what they see of the other robots is just who they play with or who they play against. And sometimes that's the same team, sometimes that's different teams, but there's at max there's 28 teams at a competition, so they haven't seen probably half of the robots. And so I'll kind of keep an eye on the different teams throughout the day. I'll keep an eye on the spreadsheet. And then when alliance selection comes, if we are in the top 6, then we're an alliance captain. And that's determined by, how well did your robot do during the day. And so once that time comes, there's usually 15 to 20 minutes for alliance selection. Me and the drive team and a couple other members that want to participate will, go into deep discussion like, okay, we saw that this team does really well, but, I heard that their robot broke, so maybe we don't want to pick them because we don't know if they can fix their robot in time for alliance selection. Or, I just saw this team's auto work perfectly on the practice field. I bet they'll work on the competition field too. So it's just a lot of, discussion and collaboration between the scouts and the drive team once qualification matches are done before we go into finals.
Wait, so you covered a bit about like the like alliance selection, that kind of stuff, but like just how does like competition day work like in general? Like how's it set up?
Sure. So teams will arrive around between like 7 and 8 a.m. We usually arrive really early because our interview slot is really early for most competitions. So in the morning before what's called opening ceremony, every team has to go through robot inspection, which is basically just saying, is your robot legal? Does it fit the size requirements? Are there any dangerous aspects? Like you can't have any loose wires. And then after, well, not necessarily after, but you have to do robot inspection, but you also have to do a formal interview. And a formal interview is 5 minutes of your team presenting to a panel of usually about 3 judges, and then 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A afterwards for them to ask you questions about your season and about your robot, about your team. And the judge interviews are important because that is what gets you judged awards, which is another aspect of competition day. So our portfolio isn't just like, oh, this is a document that records everything we do. It's actually for an award called the Think Award, which is who has the best portfolio. But our interview tries to hit other points of like, oh yeah, we have the best outreach, we have the best programming, we have the most unique or streamlined robot design, and the judges are there to decide that. So in the mornings there's interviews and there's inspection, and we'll also do pre-scouting as a team. So that's just kind of like going to other teams asking, what does your robot do? How good are you? What does your program do? Things like that. After opening ceremonies, there's usually about 30 qualification matches, and that'll take from like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and lunch is somewhere in there. And then once all of those are done, then we go into alliance selection, which is what I was talking about. You use the scouting data, you choose alliances, things like that, and then you go into semifinals, and that's just what's it called, losers bracket?
It's a double elimination
bracket. That's the kinder way to put it. And then we'll just play through that. Usually the day ends around 7 p.m. At the end of the day, you'll figure out who won the judged awards, and then you pack up and drive home.
Okay. So, Nicole, you mentioned the interview, like, in that whole overview of, like, the competition. So how does the team prepare for the judges' interview before competition?
Sure. Mira, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so about 2 weeks to 3 in advance of a competition, we'll start creating our script. So as Nicole said, we only have 5 minutes to tell the judges like the big points of our entire season so far. So each person's script is only a couple sentences long. So we actually have our team members memorize them, and that actually makes it a lot smoother on competition day instead of actually having it right in front of them. Because if they have it right in front of them, they'll be reading it off it instead of making eye contact with the judges, which is something that we really want to have that connection with the judges. And we'll practice a couple times every week before a competition, and sometimes there's little tweaks and changes that need to happen, but yeah.
Okay, so how do you decide which team members cover each topic during the interview?
Yeah, we try to kind of put people on what they did. Sometimes it's harder for to assign freshmen, but for the most part, if I'm just gonna make up a name. If Bob worked on the gripper, then I don't want him to present about the youth outreach that he participated in but didn't set up. I'd rather him talk about the gripper because he's gonna be a lot more passionate about it. He's gonna have a lot more enthusiasm. So for example, like I mentioned earlier, I'm planning the CMOG thing right now. That's my interview script. Mira is the lead for Unified Robotics. That's her interview script. So we kind of try to pick everybody's strength, and then we give them that as their script.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And one last question. Mm-hmm. Does the team debrief after a judges session to discuss strengths and areas for improvement?
Yeah, so we don't do it directly after our interview time slot because we have a lot of other stuff that needs to be done on competition days. But the next meeting that we have after our competition, so normally on Monday night, we'll get together and we'll do what we call SWOT. So we'll do strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Just to what did you observe happen during competition day? And that's also when we'll talk about the script and how it went and what the judges' questions were like and how team members answered them, so that we can learn from that and then prepare for our next competition using that as our guideline.
guys for coming on today. I'll let you get back to your work. This is the final episode of the Purple People podcast. Thank you for listening. 5-3.
5-6.